lose yourself in a good book. The Board Gosh Energy Book Club.
Now, do you have an album that you listen to over and over again? And maybe it's an album that not too many people will be familiar with. Who knows? In his latest book, Buried Treasure Volume 2, Overlooked, Forgotten and Uncrowned Albums, 2FM DJ Dan Hegarty uncovers the musical treasures that time forgot. The book features reviews, memories and stories from a host of well-known faces. And Dan joins us now to tell us more. Dan, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks very much.
Talk about a labour of love, and not only a labour of love, but the second time round doing it. Obviously, Buried Treasures Volume 1 either went very well or else you felt you just kind of were scratching the surface.
Both. Actually. it did fine. And yeah, you could be scratching the surface on 50 volumes. So. Yeah. Volume 2 is only kind of digging a little bit deeper. Yeah,
and tell me, where's the bar? What qualifies an album as a buried treasure?
Well, that's what you call a degree of interpretation.
Okay, yeah.
You can argue. I mean, Dave Fanning said to me, well, nearly any album could be, you know, called forgotten,
yeah.
You know, these days. But I suppose it's one that is of a high standard, that didn't maybe do quite as well as it should have commercially, or one that just you never hear about in conversation, or you never read about online anymore. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that you could measure that by.
It's funny, Tom Dunn, who I used to work with when I was in Today FM, he once said to me, look, there's two sorts of music, right? There's good and bad. You know, and that's basically it, and that itself is down to interpretation as well. But speaking of Tom, one of Something Happens, his band's albums actually makes it into your second book here.
Yeah, been there, seen that, done that. Right. The I suppose debut album proper from them. It's just a really, really good album. It's one that I actually heard through my bedroom wall. My sister's a few years older than me.
Yes.
And I started hearing all this music. It wasn't like what you'd hear on Top of the Pops anymore. It was just this different music. And that was one of the albums I heard. I remember hearing Beach and Forget Georgia and all these songs. Going, that's quite good. And then I found out that one of them lived down the road and you could see them in Dublin. And yeah, it's just one of those albums when you go back to all these years later, it still sounds really good.
Yeah, one of the albums actually that when I got the book yesterday, I was reading through it and I said, I had that in the CD player, which is unusual anymore, the CD player in the car just this week gone by, which is the Stunning's Paradise in the Picture House. One of my favourite albums of all time. Delighted to see it included here as well.
Well, similar vintage, for want of a better expression. It's a very, very strong album. You still hear Brewing Up a Storm, and I don't know about you, but it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I hear it. Yeah,
the Wall Brothers, and what performers they were, and still are, of course. You know, pick out one or two then from me, Dan, that catch your attention, that were particularly memorable for you in the book. Is there anything in particular?
Well, I suppose more recently, there's one by a Dublin band called Funeral Suits called Lily of the Valley. They worked with Stephen Street, who's produced everyone from the Cranberries to... it's a long list.
Okay.
It's a petition-length list. Yeah. And that's a remarkable album. It really kind of straddles the kind of indie rock into a pop genre as well. Zooropa by U2.
I was surprised to see Zooropa in there now. Why is that there?
Well, when you talk about U2 and you talk about albums, does anyone ever bring up Zooropa as an album?
I'll give you that. No, they don't.
It's either October, which is in the last book, or Zooropa. They always get overlooked.
Yeah.
And Zooropa is an outstanding album. If you think about the songs on it, you think about Numb, you think about Lemon, and you think about like, another great song, Daddy's Gonna Pay for Your Crash Car.
Yes, yeah.
It's just a remarkably good album, and it just gets wildly overlooked.
So all the albums in this are kind of albums that should have been bigger than they were, or that were quickly forgotten. What happens? Why is it, and this is probably just too big a question to answer in 2 minutes, but why is it that some albums by an artist get overlooked and actually can sometimes be better than the ones that are commercially successful for them?
There's so many factors that go to come into play. Luck is one of the huge parts of it. But as well, I suppose it's what maybe the label, the record label they're signed to, what their priority is at the time. And what's in fashion as well. Sometimes things are just not in fashion at that time. It's an awful thing to say. You can have great music. It's just wrong time, wrong place.
Yeah. You remember as well back in the day when you had to save up to buy your album or your CD, and if you bought the wrong one and it wasn't a great one, do you know what? It didn't matter. You just kept listening to it anyway. Like the Stone Roses' second album, for instance, you know, not as good as their first, but I bought it, and do you know what? I didn't have much money, so that kept going back into the CD player time and time again. And for some people, that's how they end up falling in love with the particular album, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I think familiarity is a really big part of it. People say, "Oh, this is one of the best albums I've ever heard." Part of that is obviously very good, and it is obviously your thing. But part of it is you're familiar with it, and the attachments you have with it. It reminds you of a particular time of your life.
Yeah.
And I guess that's largely what music is about for a lot of people.
Yeah,
It certainly is for me.
And look, this has been obviously a huge labour of love, and hopefully there'll be many more of them as well. Buried Treasure Volume 2, Overlooked, Forgotten and Uncrowned Albums by Dan Haggerty, as I say, available in all good bookstores now, and make a lovely stocking filler for that time that's coming very soon as well.
What's it called again?
I can't remember.
I can't remember
Let's not
either.
mention it. Dan, thanks very much. Talk to you again soon. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Lose yourself in a good book. The Board Gosh Energy Book Club.